Wasn't there something where people were asking you, like, who is Mike Jones?
Who's Mike Jones?
He's like his name is kind of sounds like a Jack Carr novel or something, like Mike Jones.
Who's Mike Jones?
It's a mysterious
Mike
guy.
Jones is a Canadian knife builder, and he built this knife right here. We collabed on this knife. He asked me to just give him a design. Everything I wanted in the perfect kind of skinning all around backcountry hunting knife. So I scratched something out on paper in no time. Like, he had this knife back to me. We changed some things. We ended up with a Grip Tech handle on here, which is really cool. 52100 steel, which is one of my favorite steels. Holds an edge really well, and you can tacky it up. You can sharpen this thing when you need to after you went steel to bone too many times on a critter. Got some really cool features with the jimping and where it's located and just the overall feel of the knife. That's kind of what I was looking for. I wanted something that was ergonomic, skinny in the middle, a little bit fatter to the back, and it just fit my hand really well. This is a very lightweight knife, by the way. It's only 7¼ inches, 2.8 ounces. And then just under a 3-inch cutting surface on the actual blade itself. Kydex sheath, by the way, so you got a bunch of different ways you can attach Kydex, like anything made in Kydex. I actually put an multi-clip on the back here, so I can run this on my pack, I can run it on a belt, I could run it in my pocket, I could run it on my bino harness.
Great. Well, you can get the very first Stealthy Hunter knife at our website, stealthyhunter.com. We don't know how many we're producing right now, but it's going to be a short run, small run. So we will be shipping. If you're seeing this before February of 2025, the date is to be shipping mid-February. So get yours before they sell out. This is a big project for Ryan. Something new, something creative. So it's been fun.
It's another knife for my fat collection of knives.
Who is Mike Jones?
Canadian knife builder.
So you can see that, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So.
If I can't see that, I got problems.
This is the worst thing about getting older is your eyes, and I'm determined to figure it out.
I hope you can see those numbers, because those things are like an inch and a half.
I can, but there's like a real weird blurriness to it. I can see it, but it's just not crystal clear. Okay, well, hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Ryan and I are just sitting here talking about problems, and we
wanted to do a follow-up podcast, right?
I've worked all day today, so I'm a little tired. My brain's tired. But we
wanted to get together because we said that we would do a follow-up podcast to the last one on the diet. For some reason, the diet.
The carnivore.
Always talking about the diet. The carnivore diet or the animal-based diet. I'm almost sick of hearing the term carnivore diet. I'm sick of hearing it from myself, and I'm sick of hearing it from everybody else. But the diet, the animal-based diet. So last time we got on here and we talked, I think I was still a couple weeks out from my 1 year, 1 year anniversary on the diet. And then we said we'd hop back on after I changed some stuff. So we talked about what I was going to do. I was going to add in some fruit and berries and avocados. I think I did that. I was on a trip, so I actually went a couple weeks past the due date. I think I started mid to late December on this new fruit edition. So I've got a few weeks now of fruit and berries and avocados. And those are the things that I've reintroduced, right? So we just wanted to talk about that and give the results, how I'm feeling, what's the plan for the future, because on the last one, obviously there was a lot of questions. People wanted to know if we would talk about the changes I saw after introducing these fruits. They also wanted to know, there's a lot of questions which I hate talking about, and that's blood work questions and am I going to die and
Thank God
what are
for
my
me,
numbers?
because otherwise you wouldn't be getting that information.
Yeah. It is a foreign language.
I've been like pestering him because we get a lot of questions about the numbers, and if he doesn't talk about it, you guys are going to pester him with wanting to know the numbers. So I've convinced him that we should talk about this. And I think he has some very unique numbers, which will actually be helpful because the research that I've done on carnivore, and first we should preface this podcast with, we are not experts in this. I am not a carnivore diet expert. I am not a ketogenic diet expert.
I'm not a doctor in any way.
And he is not a doctor.
And so I just have an opinion, and I just know how I feel and what I'm doing. That's it.
And he has less liability than me, so I have to put a disclaimer out that I don't profess to be an expert at this. All our old
Getting old.
But I've seen him do it for the last year, and I've seen his labs. I wish that we would have done more labs, but Ryan's lifestyle does not, he's not on that level. You know, I probably would have done more labs for myself because I'm literally in a doctor's office every day. I can have my colleague draw my blood for me every day if I wanted to. And he's out in the mountains, he's gone, he's doing that. And, you know, months go by and you don't really think about it. So for him, it was more like, how do I feel? What am I noticing?
Well, and my mistrust in doctors. I just don't trust doctors all that much, except for my wife. I trust her. But she's the only one. I've seen enough out of doctors in the last few years that my trust has gotten even less. And I see what they've been doing over a lifetime with over-prescribing and getting people.
Yeah, and we can talk about that a little bit, trust in doctors.
And so, like, it's like with everything, you know, doctors are one that I don't really take a whole lot of advice. They don't offer health advice anyway when it comes to diet and foods. They generally like to throw pills at you, but it's like with anything else either. I like to, you know, I could hear something, but I want to see it for myself. So this was just a way, like, I've heard about this thing. If you talk to dietitians, they'll tell you it's the worst thing in the world for you, some of them. Your cholesterol is going to go sky high. If your cholesterol goes sky high, you're going to need to get on a statin and blah, blah, blah. And so, you know, my mistrust in doctors, maybe, I don't know, it might kill me someday. But I just wanted to do this diet, test it out, see how I felt. Yeah, we're going to do the blood work and look at the numbers. And I think most people would see all these red boxes on here and probably say, you're about to stroke out.
But you also got a calcium score.
I did.
And we're going to talk about that.
That was, yeah. I got a calcium score because I just wanted to know, like, them arteries clogging up or what? Like, I've done it for a year. What's going on in there? The plaque's building up or whatever's building up in my... Yeah, so I don't want to have a heart attack. I still want to live a long time. I got young daughters that I got to keep up with.
And a young wife.
Yeah, a young, beautiful wife. But, so, yeah, there's several things we can talk about. And then I also got the age-old question, like, what are you eating? I thought we explained that pretty well in the last podcast. And we are actually going to do a follow-up video to what I'm eating in the backcountry. Most of the questions are related to that, like, what are you eating on the mountain? And I guess I must have glossed over it a little bit.
Well, so you talked about it a little bit, but
we're going to go in detail, and we're going to make a video of
We'll do a freeze-drying podcast video, and he's going to go through a recipe and show you everything. And we'll do that in a separate one, because that's a whole other thing itself.
Okay, so in a nutshell, I'm going to go over this diet for the last year, abbreviated version. Started it out. It's kind of a competition with myself. I just wanted to see if I still had it. Still had the willpower to not eat breads and sugars and spaghetti and any carbohydrates for a year. Started off as just challenging myself to 90 days. I breezed through the 90 days. I didn't really have the bad effects that some people get with it. So I was like, well, let's do it for a year, and that'll be a real test. I'll I'll be able to kind of glean better information after a year. And that also forced me to have to get through a long hunting season, through the fall season. And so I had to adjust my meals, obviously. No more snacking, no more sitting down for a glassing session and grabbing some dehydrated or freeze-dried fruit, because I can't eat that. And, you know, a lot of guys do like Haribos and gummy bears and stuff. There's none of that on this diet. So if I did do a snack on the mountain, it was either a little bit of cheese, but mostly just some like dehydrated meats, some jerky or meat sticks. But mostly...
Or maybe a keto brick if you absolutely have to.
And if you've seen those keto bricks, there's like... It's a fat bomb. It's just a brick of fat for the most part. And there's a couple of carbs in there, but those keto bricks, like, you literally eat a third of one in a day, maybe, if you can get through that much. And then you just space it out and you take a few bites like daily. So it ends up being hardly any carb at all. It's mostly just high fat. But for the most part, what I found, and I didn't think it would be this way, is I was just eating 2 meals a day. And then ever so often I'd grab a meat stick or some jerky. But I didn't think that would be the case. Like, I just figured, well, I'm still going to need some snacks. So what am I going to need to... How much jerky am I going to need to make to fill the gap between my morning meal and my evening meal? In the end, not much at all. And the reason being is those 2 meals that capped the day were so full of fat. So obviously when you do this diet, you get into ketosis, so your body utilizes the fat for energy instead of the glucose.
And how did you know you were in ketosis?
I got a little bottle of pee strips off Amazon, so I'd pee on those little strips every once in a while, and whatever color, deep purple, I was deep into ketosis. So that's how I knew, and I actually got into it fairly quick. And you know, I wasn't ever cheating on the meal and falling off the wagon, I guess, like all my buddies Mark Livesay. He didn't last at all.
This is not going to be a Livesay bashing podcast.
Well, we got to put at least one Livesay bashing into each podcast. Yeah, he didn't last at all, and he fell off the wagon pretty quick. But clearly, my mind is a lot tougher than his. His is pretty weak, and
oh, jeez, man.
His mental toughness isn't what it once was. But yeah,
well, then
overall,
I'm in that group too. I only lasted 3 months.
Failed.
Did I do 3 months?
You didn't make 3 months.
I didn't make 3 months, but
she felt much different. Her, and I think to each his own. Everybody's going to get a little bit different experience out of this. Some people, they thrive on it. Some people literally go, like when Rogan does it every year, he does it every January, I think.
Yeah, he does it like for a month.
And for half of that month, he's like, got the squirts. Like he's literally
it's
explosive.
Fun for like weeks.
Diarrhea.
Yeah. Another symptom Ryan didn't have.
No. I think why I didn't have it is, and other folks have noticed this too, I never ate that many carbs. So when I was on the mountain, my carb choice was freeze-dried fruit. So those were my carbs. I wasn't eating a ton of bread. I went away from eating oatmeal a long time ago. You know, my meals would have some carbs in it. They'd have some vegetables, and sweet potatoes was like, that was my probably main carb. Like when I'm on the mountain hunting, that was my carb of choice. With the leathers and the freeze-dried little sweet potato bites. Those were really good with a little bit of honey in there. So that's how I used to do it. But when I did this diet, you know, I was curious how I was going to feel. And one of the biggest reasons I wanted to do it is for my mental health, the clarity, the recollection, the words. Trying to find them sometimes is a real struggle for a while. And I wanted to see, because I'd heard that people experience kind of a new focus. Clarity is much better. The brain fog goes away. And that was noticeable right out of the gates. Within the first month, I was like, man, all of a sudden I'm like recalling those words again like I used to. But I was losing it for a while. I was getting some Biden brain for sure. But yeah, so that was one of the reasons why I just kept going with it. Went for a year. So I had great experiences with it for that year and got through the entire season, eating, like I said, my 2 meals, loaded with fat. Probably on those mountain meals, there's a good half to 3/4 of a cube of butter in the morning and the same at night. So plenty of fat. And that was the reason I just didn't need to snack all day. My energy was from the fat I had eaten the night before. So it was working for me. And so, I wanted to get through it. I got through my year, decided, okay, I'm going to add some fruits, which who doesn't love fruit? And avocados. I like eating avocados in the morning, so now I'm back to doing that. So update, I guess, is how do I feel? So I've been doing it for a few weeks, so I don't have like a huge sample set quite yet. But definitely has changed some things. Like immediately when I started eating those carbs.
You actually had more GI upset eating carbs.
Yeah, my gut started getting...
Yeah, he had more GI upset eating the carbs than taking the carbs out.
Yeah. Yeah, so I brought the carbs, like some grapefruits, some oranges, some apples, some grapes. We have a lot of grapes.
Blueberries, raspberries.
Yep, some berries. And a little bit of cream with the berries, too.
Yeah, we have this new thing. Like, if you are doing this, the best dessert is just whip up some heavy whipping cream and eat that. That's what we do at night now.
So that's like a dessert. So, yeah, I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's nice to be able to eat those things again because they're enjoyable. But I've definitely noticed my guts feel back to being like kind of bloated at times after I eat an apple in the morning. I don't feel lean and mean like I did when I was pretty strict carnivore. I don't say that I was super strict carnivore because I had coffee. And a super strict carnivore guy or gal wouldn't have the coffee, but I maintain coffee throughout. I'm not going to give up the coffee. I don't think it's doing anything detrimental to me. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at now. Definitely noticing some GI stuff again. I mean, we can get gross and talk about bowel movements.
Sure, that's what I talk about all day. Why not?
Because like on carnivore, it's awfully nice because it's like once every other day, sometimes once every 3 days, and that's kind of cool. And now it's every day, like back to every day, which is what it is. But it definitely is night and day from when I was on carnivore till now. So the question is, moving forward, I'm going to do this for a little bit longer. Actually, Haley and I are doing a hunt tomorrow. But
are you going? Do you think you're going to go full swing into like eating everything again?
I think I want to get back because I'm not in ketosis right now. So, now when I do a little test strip in the morning, I'm not even in ketosis at all. Zero.
Just from eating fruit.
Just from the fruit. Oh. Yeah. So.
Well, you're only supposed to eat like under 50 to 25 grams of carbs a day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like some apples, some grapes, some berries is enough. It's knocked me completely out of it.
And what if you fasted for longer? So what if after you ate dinner, you didn't eat till noon?
Which is what I did for a while.
The problem is you wouldn't be able to have your coffee with cream in the morning.
Yeah.
You would have to not eat any fat of any kind until like noon. Maybe you would get into ketosis even eating some fruit in the afternoon.
Possibly. It's a whole nother experiment. So I'll be honest, like when I was doing the diet in a way where I was eating those 2 meals a day and I was keeping that feeding window inside of 8 hours, that's when I felt the best. I didn't keep that because it's hard. It's hard to not eat till noon because you got stuff going on at noon. And it's easy just to, when the family's eating in the morning, like get your stuff done, eat breakfast, and then not eat till night. It's kind of hard to not eat in the morning, and I really do want my coffee in the morning.
It's the first thing you do.
I want my coffee in the evening, which
and you want
right
cream,
now it's evening.
But it would be different if you just did coffee. If you had black coffee in the morning, no cream. But you could do that.
Yeah.
Because that supposedly doesn't throw you out of your fast. But the minute you add cream to it...
But that's not what threw me out of the fast, though. It was the fruit. Because I was doing that
No. I mean, if in the morning and you weren't going to eat till noon, you could still do coffee. Yeah. You just can't do any cream.
I've just found that the feeding window is... It absolutely makes you feel better.
Yeah.
It absolutely works better. So, yeah, not eating till 10 o'clock noon is the best way. And my body feels better when I do it that way. And getting that full 16-hour fast every single day by a mile. It's just, I can sacrifice a lot of things for this diet, but sometimes I got to eat in the morning and then I do stuff. And especially when I'm hunting, because I get up in the morning and I don't want to be having to make a meal midday. I'm hunting, so I want to eat in the morning in my tent and then not eat until I'm back in my tent when it's dark.
Well, what if you got up in the morning, and so hunting may be a little different, because hunting, you're getting up, you're eating, but then you're going out and you're walking, you're being active, you're moving. At home, you're not really a morning person with exercise, but what if you got up in the morning, you exercised, and then that would pull you through till noon or so, and then you would have that fast, and you would be able to...
I think with the fruit, like it happens so fast. I mean, it's an experiment we could definitely try. But all I know is I introduce fruit and berries, and that strip, there is no color to it at all. Like, it is out of ketosis, like that. And so that's the only thing that's changed. My feeding window really hasn't changed much. It's just the fruit being brought back in. So I don't know if it's too much, but I'm not really eating all that much fruit.
I wonder if you ate, like, vegetables instead of fruit. Like...
See, that's never going to happen.
Supposedly on the Keto Flex diet, you can eat vegetables. So what if you add like cucumbers or like squash or something? Or sweet potato. I just wonder if like that would be different than fruit, because fruit is high glycemic.
I think if I eat sweet potato, it's going to be similar. I'm going to be pulled right out of ketosis.
Yeah, but okay, what kind of vegetable would you want to eat?
I don't really crave vegetables at all anymore. The one thing I definitely missed was fruit.
Kale pancakes?
Yeah, I don't crave kale pancakes.
Paley, our daughter, is so happy. You know why? Because she's like, oh my gosh, you guys used to force feed me kale pancakes, and I hated it. She's like, there's nothing worse than a green pancake, because Ryan used to love kale in our garden.
Yeah, it was a bad time. I used to be way too into greens.
We had such a lovely garden. I can't wait I really want to have a garden again. And I know he doesn't, but like I want to grow my own onions, my own root vegetables, because I like some carrots, I like onions, I like to make good soups, but I really have not been eating as many vegetables since I stopped doing it. We're just not eating as many like leafy green, or definitely not eating brassicasias and stuff like broccolis and cauliflower, like none of that stuff. And I have to say that I do notice, because when I did the diet, it totally does change your GI stuff. I had all the GI symptoms for 2 weeks. I was like in the Rogan boat. But then my problem is like if I don't eat, like if I eat too much dairy and I don't eat some kind of fiber, like I'm like not going to the bathroom, and that's not good. However, I did notice, like when you don't eat those foods, those veggies, the fiber, the brassicaceae, now knowing about like the microbiome and like how it's fed by short chain fatty acids from fiber, and then you start wondering, like what is this doing to the microbiome if I'm not eating that? But I tell you, like your bloating and gas literally goes away.
It's gone.
And honestly, even just eating some fruit, you don't even have it. It's the vegetables, and I feel like the vegetables and the grains and like the breads and stuff like that.
Well, I think the best thing you can do to heal someone's gut, right, is an all-meat diet. Not if it's even just short term. kicking out the greens is like the one thing that you need to do, or fiber, right? And do an all meat diet. A lot of people have healed their gut issues pretty quickly.
I think that the old adage used to be that you needed more fiber, but what we see with now, irritable bowel disease and irritable bowel syndrome can be very different. So irritable bowel disease is Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, and those people usually do best just not even eating. And the problem we see with those folks is they don't even want to eat, so they lose a lot of weight, and they're bleeding, and they have tons of pain, and eating, we put them on like a fast where they stop eating and it heals the lining. But those are the people that do great with the, with the high meat diet, with the high fat and protein and that, and they don't do good with any fibrous carbs. Irritable bowel syndrome, sometimes people do better with some carb like fiber because they've got like chronic diarrhea, but it's not from a disease. It's just because their gut lining isn't working, so the fiber slows things down. I mean, this is where this gets so
but here's the
overwhelmingly
thing.
confusing.
When you do carnivore, there's no gut issues. Like for me, there wasn't. There's no bloating or gas or any of that stuff. That goes away so quickly. And I've said this 1,000 times about Brian Call, and he's doing the carnivore as well. And you want to talk about a 180 turn, like the gassiest guy I've ever been around in my life, right? And it was just like, he just talked as if it was normal. Like, why doesn't everybody, it's like, and this is nonstop all day long in the teepee. Now it's completely gone. So I don't know. It just doesn't seem like that should be something that's going on in your guts, like gas that much. So when you do carnivore, for me, maybe not for everybody, but it sure seems like the lion's share of folks that talk about it is your bloating and the gut stuff all just kind of goes away.
And I always
once you've adjusted.
I always think too about the genetics of it, because everybody has different genetics, and some of us have really old genetics, like our blood types, like all the things that affect who we are and where you came from in the world, and what, like, because I think about it, if I were to think back to like sub-Saharan Africa, where all of us came from, but like I'm an O blood type, so
and I'm an
that's
A.
And he's an A, and supposedly he's supposed to be a vegetarian and eat like all these plants. And
see, that's right.
I'm supposed to be a carnivore and eat like meat and.
Yeah, that's why I feel like I don't want to listen to doctors and all these experts telling me what I should do, because they would say that you should only eat meat and I should be a vegetarian, and yet it's kind of the opposite. Like, I do really good on this diet. Yeah. You did not do that great on this diet.
But I just think about like genetics, and genetics age, right? Because we've had thousands and thousands of years of different stages in the planet. Like the agricultural, era. Before the agricultural, it was hunter and gatherer. And then we had the industrial. We've had modern era. The food supply has all changed. And if you think about hunter-gatherer societies, they were not eating bowlfuls of broccoli for dinner. They just weren't. They were digging up, they were wild harvesting, they were picking plants based on the time of the year, and most of them were seasonal. They were picking up tubers and roots. And if we think about root vegetables, most people do a little better with root vegetables than they do with greens and really fibrous vegetables. So than they do with cabbages and stuff. But maybe
I'm pretty sure I'm at the point where I consider greens like my number one enemy. They're I just say toxic all the time.
But I also think it's the way that we cook them and everything. Because think about
trying to find a reason to have greens in your diet.
But think about like cabbage. Nobody feels good just eating cabbage, but they used to make sauerkraut and they used to ferment it. It would create bacteria, and then that would do it. And a lot of cultures, if you look back on how they actually made food, slowly cooked the beans, fermented the food, made the bone broth, ate the bone marrow. We just don't do a lot of that. I mean, even though this whole the whole homestead thing has brought that back and people are getting closer to their food, you just also have to think about your genetics. And obviously Ryan and I did the same thing for 3 months, and his response was so physically different than my response. And so people are different. And that's why I think it's hard to trust cookie cutter diet plans and cookie cutter, all these things. Like,
Well,
you
yeah,
should do this and you should do
because
that.
I heard
so
it from
hard.
a lot of folks, like you're not going to have the energy, you're not going to be able to have the endurance, you're going to bonk, blah, blah, blah. And until you just do it and don't listen to all those folks, those so-called experts, that may be true for them, but it sure as heck wasn't true for me. I feel like I've never had the endurance that I've got right now. When I was on the diet especially, I just went through a pretty intense season. It was a good season. I spent a lot of days out there on the mountain doing this crazy diet in like conditions that you would think you would just need to eat more and you'd probably need some carbs. Because most people out there, the experts are going to tell you, no, you can't do that without carbs. They promote gummy bears and junk food and blah, blah, blah to guys that do the PCT, the hiking guys that do this. Like, you're not going to make it without junk food. It's just easy to digest and completely the opposite of how my body reacts to that stuff. That kind of food makes my guts feel bloated. And I don't have the all-day endurance. And if I want to have the all-day endurance, I have to keep eating every hour. I'm like ripping open another, package.
Because
and
you're
I'm
burning carbs.
opening up.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of
ketone bodies
hunger,
are they're much more efficient and they last longer.
Well, when you eat fruit, which I ate a
the
lot of fruit
mitochondria.
on the mountain for years and years and years. With the dehydrator, it was all dehydrated fruits. And then with the freeze dryer, it was all freeze dried. And it's one of my favorite snacks. You just pack a nice baggie of, berries and peaches and apples and all the things, melon, all that stuff. And it's pretty easy. And you have to you almost have to feed the beast when you're doing it, because you sit down to glass and you feel hungry again and you just snacked an hour ago. And
do you think some of that's mental though, just like our society in general? Like, if you're sitting there, it's like if you're watching a TV show just relaxing, you're like, I need to be eating something right now.
There's
That's
some to that. Yeah, I would
agree.
agree there's some to that, but there's also like the hunger pains. Like your gut feels empty, like you're hungry. You just feel like I'm not full anymore. Whereas on this, when you are so loaded with fat in your meals, you kind of forget to eat. Like, you could go the whole day and you're like, holy smokes, it's 10 o'clock and I should probably eat something.
There's an entire cascade of hunger hormones and the brain talking to the gut. This is all going on all the time. And the problem with over glucose consumption is that a lot of your hunger hormones get dysregulated. And so one of the common complaints of people that are overweight or obese or have diabetes, and we know diabetes, you can't even get sugar into the cell, so that's a problem. You're going to be hungry. Your cell is hungry, yet you have all this sugar, so you're hungry. And the more you do that and your insulin becomes more resistant, you get hungrier. So people say, like, I just had dinner, but I don't feel full. And that is the downside of over consuming easily digested and absorbed glucose, right? Because the ketone bodies, the fat is harder. It takes more to get there, but it's much more efficient, and it stabilizes all of the hunger hormones, and it tells the brain you're full. And so this is really this whole conversation. If more people ate less glucose, like carbs in a day, and they learned how to become more ketotic or choose the foods that would support their hunger hormones and their brain and all this stuff, and like all these GLP-1s and all this stuff people are taking, and they're not evil. GLP-1 is just a hormone. Some people have more than others. Like, that's how different people are. But the way the diet has been created now, it makes you hungry all the time.
Well, even at a micro level, I just added these fruits in a few weeks ago, and I find myself by like 4 or 5 o'clock, I'm saying out loud, man, I'm hungry. And that's something new. Like, I actually feel hungry. Like, there's a hole in my gut. Like, I need to eat. That wasn't really the case. When I was strict, like, you could literally forget to eat and you'd be fine till the morning. But that doesn't happen when when you're not, maybe it's just a ketosis thing, because I'm not in ketosis now, and just the fruits that I'm eating, I just feel like it's making me hungry, and I could definitely find myself snacking all day if I let myself. And that's not reintroducing a whole lot of food. It's just some fruit and berries.
Yeah.
But I'm not burning from fat now. It's like expecting a little bit of carb to get me through the day because I'm not in ketosis. So I don't know.
What's the mental piece of it? Because I feel like, you know, when you go to a social function or it's Christmas, right? And there's all this lovely food that I'm making and croissants your mother brings and like everybody wants it. I notice in the last year, you haven't really had any, you know, like you would think like, I'll just cheat and I'll have one because it looks so good. And I've noticed you haven't done any of that. Like, it's almost like you don't even care.
You know why? Because I'm not weak-minded like Mark Livesey.
No.
I like to always
without
measure
trashing
myself.
Livesey, what is the mental piece of it? Is it because you're so mentally strong, or is it because you actually don't care and you don't even want the food at a point? It doesn't even look good.
No, I definitely want the food.
The chocolate cake doesn't look good.
Oh, I'd smash some cake if I let myself, for sure.
Okay, because I was just thinking you were such a stud, and like your hormones were just like, I'm
too stubborn to fall off the wagon. I don't want to live with failing.
So here's one thing you never do with Ryan. Don't ever make a commitment and then back out on it.
Yeah.
Because you will get harassed. You will get taunted. You know, you will get like, you can't do it, you're weak. And you know what? I'm so used to it. But it's hard for the kids sometimes because Paley says, I'm going to do it, but she doesn't do it. And then he taunts her and then she gets upset. And I'm like, first of all, don't commit to doing stuff because you're going to get taunted, you know? And he's just, that's like how he is.
That's why, I keep bringing Livesey up. He just got on it again because he looks back and he felt great when he was doing it, but he's got some cravings with like certain things, Monster energy drinks, Coffee Mate. Like, what is Coffee Mate? Plastic, pretty much.
So many chemicals.
Some things. But he felt really good, wasn't sore and all that kind of stuff. So he notices it, but it's real easy to fall off and just go back to the old ways unless you're just too dang stubborn to fail. So I don't want to fail. I feel like the older I get, I want to, you can always challenge yourself with physical challenges. We do that every hunt. For the most part, we almost make it too harder than it needs to be. But it's pretty rare that you're given a chance to like prove to yourself that you have the willpower to just turn down all this really good food that would be real easy to just smash a pie or eat a birthday cake for birthdays and all that kind of stuff.
But you also felt better on it, which makes a huge difference. If like I felt better. Like I shared in the first podcast, I felt better. My joints didn't hurt. And from like 4 in the morning to like I said, 4 in the afternoon, I felt pretty good.
Yeah.
But then, and I've noticed in you too, there is a drop off with Carnivore that happens about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night. You literally drop off a cliff where you're ready to go to bed. And honestly, I think that is a natural thing. I think that our society, based on having all these lights everywhere, we think we're supposed to be productive for 16 hours a day. No, actually, like when it's the winter here and the sun is down at 4:30, your body's probably saying like, time to start getting ready for bed.
Well, I will say the downside to it for me is like right now, brain is shutting down. Like at this time of day, the carnivore brain, it's time to like slow down and start leaning towards the bed, because
which
you
is
just
not something you were like before. You were
I could stay
total
up,
night owl.
I could stay up really late before, but now it's very different. So you kind of crash after. I mean, usually by 8, 9 o'clock, I'm ready to go. So, and have you noticed it's not the case since I've been eating some fruit as much? I've actually been staying up a little later.
I noticed that. Yeah, you're staying up like watching YouTube stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm kind of consistent with bed. Like I'm not a night owl, and this is, my preference. I will say though that he did really well on it. So I think that that's been helpful for you because you did really well on it. It was easier to stay motivated. You noticed your brain was working better. I do think it set a better day clock for you, where you actually get up in the morning earlier without looking like someone just dragged you behind a truck, and then you want to go to bed at a normal time. It's like your hormonal system regulated a little bit better. We're older too, if we had tried this when we were 30, like who knows what we could have done, but we're over 50, and so our time clock is a little bit different. But I mean, he's doing stuff in his 50s now that like he was not doing in his 30s at all. Like his endurance, his ability to stay with it, he doesn't get injured. I don't understand it. The crazy stuff he does, he's had some aches and pains from like, which he should have from the stuff he's doing, but like he doesn't ever, hardly ever, 95% of the time, never complains of body pain, ever. He's just very resilient, and you're built for what you do, and maybe that's why the keto diet or the carnivore has worked so well for you, and ketosis has worked so well for you, because that excess glucose is a burden on you, and this has improved your endurance. I'm actually trying to do a new thing now where I want to try to do more ketosis eating, but I have to eat a little carb. So I'm working to do more ketosis because I've been doing research on the mitochondria and hormones, and the ketosis, just all the information that's been coming out on ketosis for really the last decade or even more, is that ketosis is much more efficient for the mitochondria. And I see so many people at work that have hormone deficiency. I mean, obviously, if you go through menopause, you're going to have hormone deficiency. You can't avoid that, ladies. That's going to happen. But how can you actually make your mitochondria, which produce these hormones, and they create energy and ATP in your body, they keep you alive. If your mitochondria aren't producing energy, you die. So, like, how do you keep your mitochondria efficient? How do you keep them working? The mitochondrial membrane actually makes cholesterol. It makes testosterone. It uses vitamin D in the mitochondria. So a lot of people's problem is that they're vitamin D deficient. And a lot of times they're vitamin D deficient because they're not eating any of these foods that have vitamin D in them. And you live in a northern climate like us. And then you start wondering why you don't have any energy and why that kind of thing. So I've been reading that and learning a lot more about this since he did this. So I did feel better on it. I just had way too much cramping, and I had that crazy weird fatigue. So I'm starting to eat more ketotic, less carbs, and the carbs that I'm picking right now are literally like some vegetables. And then I'm eating like I just started this week, but today I fasted. Well, I didn't fast because I had half and half in my tea this morning. But I didn't eat from, 9 o'clock last night till noon. I didn't have any food. I had lunch today. I didn't eat my breakfast today. I ate it at lunch, and I felt really good today. And I had a lot of energy. Now, that's not every day, but I'm going to try doing that and see if I could do that. Because for our age, for our brains, like, I have to go to work. My brain has to work. I can't feel like I'm the mitochondrial support. Like, that's what I'm really wanting to do. And the other thing is light. I think, Ryan, you get a ton of natural light every year. You're sleeping in a tent, you're waking up with the sunrise, you're getting those UV light at sunrise and midday, the UVB rays. Those are the two most beneficial times to be out in the sun. And when you get those into your eyes, or the reading I've been doing, is you actually reset your body clock, you reset your mitochondria, and the more you can go into ketosis and get that light, it like heals your cells. And one of the big things that's happening right now in the world, it's a global problem, is what's called long COVID. And probably a lot of you have heard of that. And long COVID, basically what the spike protein did was it poisoned your mitochondria. And it destroyed part of the membrane in your mitochondria. So now you can't make ATP, you have chronic fatigue, you're super tired, you can't ever get over things. And I struggled with that after COVID. Ryan had some problems with COVID, that he struggled with afterwards. And him doing this diet, and the fact that he spends over 100 days a year out in natural light, living in nature, has probably made a huge difference in why this diet has worked so well for you. Most people are not hardly going outside. They're definitely not getting up and watching the sunrise come up. They're not going outside at lunch. They're working inside. I work inside all day. And there's literally weeks where I get up, it's dark. I drive to work, the sun's barely coming up. I come home, it's dark. And I haven't even been outside, except to literally walk to my car. And at the end of my day, I feel horrible. So if I have to have that thing, what can I do? And I realize with the diet, I've got to improve my mitochondria. And that's a big thing. And I think it's really important, and we don't talk about that enough. We're always talking about food. We're always talking about what are we going to do for food? How are we going to change our diet? How are we going to lose weight? Think of yourself as an animal that lives out in nature and requires, what do they eat? How do they live? Like, how much light do they get? Where do they sleep? That we have these like artificial environments that have completely altered the way that our hormones function. So
Okay, so
that's what I'm working on.
am I gonna die? Because I've got some red numbers on here. It looks like the other question that I saw was like, what are your cholesterols gonna do? Like, what does the blood work say when it comes to cholesterols?
So you would expect that cholesterols in anybody that's eating a carnivore diet or a ketogenic diet is going to be higher than is desirable.
Yeah.
And they're going to definitely be out of the range. If your doctor was a conventional doctor or a cardiologist, you would definitely be being put on a statin.
They put me on a statin right now, probably.
Yeah, that's well, they would first tell you need to stop eating how you're eating. Yeah. And then they would put you on a statin. That is first line therapy in the American Association of Cardiologists. Like, that's the first line therapy. And so as physicians, we have to be very careful, honestly, with what we tell patients to do, because statins are first line therapy. And so, I'm a naturopath and I don't necessarily buy into all this, but I still have to be careful.
Has the baseline for cholesterol number gone down?
Yes, it has.
So
when I got out of med school,
where are we
total
now?
LDL was, a normal LDL was 125, a total cholesterol was 250, but now the ranges are below 200 and below 100 for LDLs.
That's what they recommend.
Yeah.
They recommend.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because it's the new norm? Is that one of those numbers? Or is it...
I think it's based on, I don't 100% know, and I'm not even going to say because I'm not a cholesterol expert, but I guess I'm going to be after living with this. I think that over the years, based on the amount of elevated cholesterols that we're seeing in our society and the research that's done, the numbers and probably the percentage of medication being used in general in the publication and seeing what the statins do, is that lowering that number has just happened through statistical data in helping them determine those numbers.
I wonder what percentage of people, because they have high cholesterol, are now on a prescription statin.
Statins are one of the most prescribed drugs in the world.
Right.
Yeah.
They're making money off of statins, right? Hand over fist, these companies are. I'm just curious because, our brains are, we function with cholesterol.
So our brain is mostly cholesterol.
So
all
when I
your
look at a guy
steroid
like...
hormones come from cholesterol. Your mitochondria make cholesterol. They require, to make energy, you need cholesterol. So fat is very, very important. It's obviously the type of fat. And this is the problem, and you have had a liposuction done in the past, but before we did keto, we didn't do one this year, unfortunately. But that's the best way to look at all the levels, and there's going to be different doctors that differ here. There's going to be like Peter Attia, who's like statins. He would definitely put somebody on a statin who's got high ApoB, high LDLs. Over time, they're going to have more protection. Then there's other doctors, there's Dr. Sean Baker, who you've talked to, you were on his podcast, you know, he's not treating any of it, and he's very healthy and has amazing muscle mass. And
it seems as if, and it's probably just because of who I pay attention to, but it seems like
we're all biased.
The latest research coming out from the people I tune into is not a lot of folks are worried about these numbers that we're seeing from folks that are eating like we do. You know, a lot of eggs in the morning, a lot of fatty meat. You know, obviously the cholesterol is going to go up, but I feel like with brain health, maybe we have such a decline in this country because our cholesterols are not where they should be.
The diet that's promoted for cognitive decline is the ketogenic diet. Mm-hmm. So if you have somebody in your life who is starting to lose their memory, they need to go on the ketogenic diet. What is the ketogenic diet? 70% fat. So like, we know that fat, the glucose, you're not getting glucose into your brain cells, and so you need to be making ketone bodies. It's efficient, and you can fuel your brain cell. And the research that was done by a lot of these, you know, the end of Alzheimer's guy, Bredesen, he's shown that you use the keto diet, you can reverse cognitive decline. You can actually reverse early onset dementia and these things. It's very difficult to do, and we could have a whole podcast on that, but like, ketogenic diet for the brain makes a ton of sense, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why you cognitively feel so much better.
It's like night and day, and you know, you hear about it, but you have to experience it for yourself to actually be like, okay, yeah, that is absolutely true. The diet is huge, and it makes a huge difference in how my brain works. I mean, for a while there, I was just having, like I said, a hard time remembering names and faces, putting the names to the face, and just words in general. And this diet has completely reversed that. Yeah. In short order. I've only done it a year. So.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about you, honey, is that your LDLs aren't that high for how much, you know, you're eating. Your LDLs are 201, and that has gone up. I did pull those numbers up. That has gone up. I think you were at 160 something before, or not. No, your LDLs were a little high before you did it, or you've had a couple blood draws on this diet. Mm-hmm. So you've been over 100, but you haven't really gone up. Now, I have seen guys with their LDLs, total LDLs, and again, a fractionation is going to be the best because this is a big family. It's kind of silly to even just talk about LDLs in general, but I've seen guys on the diet where their LDLs are going up over 300, up 400. I saw one guy that was like 525. Now, I think, and again, I'm not an expert here, but I do understand I do understand about how cholesterol gets into the body and how our liver makes cholesterol. So we all make cholesterol in our liver, and we all absorb some through the GI lining. But genetically, some people pull way more through the GI lining when they eat. So those are the guys that they eat 2 eggs a day and their cholesterol goes up. And then there's the guy that eats 10 eggs a day and his cholesterol literally doesn't budge. And that's the guy that's probably making most of his cholesterol from his liver, and he's not really absorbing a ton through the food. And in all actuality, again, back to some of these experts, they talk about really your food doesn't have a huge impact in percentage wise on your actual cholesterol levels. Now, that's not necessarily true in this diet because you're, in comparison to the rest of the population, you're eating a ton of fat, and so you're going to see cholesterol go up. But yours aren't nearly as high as I would think they would be based on how much you're eating. Your total cholesterol is, 283. So it's 83 points over normal. That's really not that bad for that. And your HDLs have actually gone up. So HDLs are the protective cholesterols, and those have slowly been going up for you. So that's good. The one tricky thing that you have, and you've kind of, we've always struggled with this, is triglycerides. And your triglycerides have actually gone down on this diet, which is what you would think would happen because triglycerides are a fatty acid and a glycerol backbone. And so we see triglycerides going up when people are eating lots of sugar, they're drinking too much alcohol, and they're eating a lot of fat. So it would still be expected to see triglycerides be up because he's eating butter and he's eating fat, he's eating saturated fat. And those would be the recommendations that a nutritionist or whatever would tell you, like, okay, you got to stop drinking alcohol. You got to stop eating simple carbs, and then you got to stop the saturated fat. And that could be why the triglycerides. And I'm going to do a whole other podcast on triglycerides and what can affect them, because they're very tricky. There's a lot of things that play into that. But, and I did do a cholesterol podcast, and you can go back and listen to the cholesterol podcast. There's lots of information in there. But after COVID, are you okay if I share this? So after COVID, COVID put me into menopause, which means the spike protein affected my ovary, which is a glandular tissue. And we're now knowing spike protein has been infiltrating glandular tissue. Okay, we know that. And again, back to long COVID, all these things. He had the respiratory bad. I had the brain stuff. He had the respiratory stuff. Very different presentations. We both got very ill, however we got ill. And he started noticing, I don't know, a month, 2 months, 3 months after, he was noticing his hair was falling out. Now, this is very common when people get sick. It's very common. It can happen after you change your diet. You can have a shedding. We see it all the time. After a woman has a baby, a bunch of hair falls out because she's shedding, and this happens. But he has never had, as you can tell, he likes his hair and he has a lot of hair. And he never had a problem with hair. And he started noticing just hair was coming out.
Well,
and
how I noticed it is all of a sudden I had to tighten one of those little things on the back of your hat because it was starting to be a little loose.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah.
It was like
the volume of his
big
hair
wind
was
is going to
changing.
blow my hair right off. So that's how.
And we were and he was tired, but he wasn't long COVID-y like me. He just was tired, and he noticed his hair was thinning, and it was falling out. And so we ran his numbers, and sure enough, his thyroid was slow. So hypothyroid, and hypothyroid makes your hair fall out. It's one of the symptoms. So we actually treated his thyroid, and this is before we changed the diet or anything, but, he went on thyroid medication, and it did help, and we got that stabilized. His hair stopped falling out. But it makes me think, after he got ill, his hair started falling out, his thyroid, which is a glandular tissue, again, a hormonal tissue that the mitochondria can get affected, that's how he got it. So we both got these different hormonal effects that went on. And triglycerides will go up when your thyroid is slow. So this is something to think about, because a lot of guys, especially if you're listening to this, a lot of guys think, well, I don't have a thyroid problem. That's a woman's problem. And it's more common in women for sure, especially autoimmune thyroid. But if you have had a viral illness, if you had a super bad stress in your life, if you've had a big dietary change, you notice your hair's falling out. A lot of vegetarians, their hair is falling out because they don't have enough iron. They don't have enough trace minerals. They don't have the things that you need to keep your hair, protein. Amino acids build your hair. And so you'll see it in different food groups too, as the hair loss thing. But I noticed that. And so the triglyceride thing has been a little tricky with us, trying to figure out, is it his thyroid? Is it the cholesterol? But actually, your triglycerides have gone down, which has been a good movement. And as his thyroid seems to be balanced now, he doesn't really seem to be having a problem with it. That's what that looks like. So the cholesterols are high for him. They're not as high as I would expect them, and they're definitely not as high as I've seen in other guys.
With eating, most mornings, I'm doing 6 to 8 eggs. And then we're doing bacon too, 3 or 4 pieces of bacon. Pretty good amount of fat.
Yeah, I don't eat that. Yeah.
And then every evening is a very fatty cut of meat.
Well, the experiment would be, babe, is you just stop eating fat. You stop eating bacon, you stop eating any fat, and you draw your labs and you see what happens. And we've seen this in other people. I've had patients who were going to get their health insurance or their life insurance, and they had to run and they're doing carnivore or keto, and they're feeling amazing. They're feeling great. And then they had a life insurance come up, and they make you go get your labs done, and their labs come back like this. Your life insurance won't, they make you, they told my patient you have to stop eating like that, and you have to redraw blood before we will okay your insurance. So you got to be careful too with some of these, because the conventional medical model is in all these systems. The cholesterol is set.
Until you get on a statin, we're not going to.
Yeah, so they want to see that your numbers are normal, because this could relate to cardiovascular disease or stroke or whatever, and that's the highest killer of people. So if you're looking at life insurance, it would be like if you had diabetes and they're trying to give you life insurance, they're going to make you get your diabetes under control before they give you life insurance. So this is an issue. And like for us, we know it's a dietary thing, and his other markers are really healthy and there's no problem there. And so you do have to think about all the systems that work into this. But his are actually, for what he's eating, I would say that he makes more cholesterol internally than you're absorbing through your gut lining. And your triglycerides are going down as your thyroid gets better and as you are just not eating any sugars.
So I had heard a podcast about a calcium score.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what podcast I listened to, but they were talking about it, right? Can we talk about that real quick?
Yeah.
Just because I wanted to know, like, all right, I got through a year of this. Like, am I all clogged up? What's it going to look like? So I went in, super quick, easy thing.
So easy. And it's not that expensive.
I feel like I was in there for less than 2 minutes.
Dudes, you guys spend 3 times more on like a backpack than what it costs to get a calcium score if you're paying out of your pocket. It's literally that easy, and it's like a couple $100.
Yeah, and it can bring awareness to a problem if you're getting pretty choked up in there, right?
Yes.
Okay. Seems like it's
now,
a pretty
first,
no-brainer.
let me tell you, we don't normally order and or recommend a calcium score for people. These is a tool utilized, one, if you have high-risk cardiovascular disease in your family.
Explain what a calcium score is. Like,
so it's just scoring your cardiac arteries. So you have 4 main arteries on the heart, and they are like any other vessel in your body. This is where cardiac disease comes from. So when they say you're having a heart attack related to cardiac disease, or your left coronary artery is occluded, it can't get blood in, which means the heart can't get blood. And so the heart muscle can't get blood, and when the heart muscles can't get blood, the muscle starts to die. It gets deoxygenated and starts to die. This is a heart attack. This is a myocardial infarction, we call it. And so depending on how many vessels, you've heard of people, they had a triple bypass. That means they had 3 arteries that had to be bypassed, or they were clogged and no blood flow was being able to get to the cardiac muscle. So what the calcium score does is it just looks. It's a CT scan of your heart that looks at your coronary vessels, and it scores how much atherosclerotic plaques you have in the vessel in the CT that they can see, and then each vessel gets a score. And this would be helpful, like if somebody was coming into me, they were complaining of cardiac issues, they had really high elevated, past history of cholesterol, they were obese, their dad died of a heart attack at 52. A calcium score would be helpful to run, because it would help me see, could this be is there decreased blood flow to a part of the heart, and should I be worried about this? Should I send them to the cardiologist? Now, the theory is that cholesterols cause plaques in the vessel. And again, the fractionations are the best, because it's going to tell you what types of cholesterols are bad and which ones are good and which ones are going to give you more plaques. But in general, that's why you would run a calcium score. So it's not like, but you can, if someone says to me, I want a calcium score, sure. It's not expensive. It's not hard to do. Nowadays, they're kind of promoting it, the hospitals, because I think it's the trend too. Like, they're like, well, it's just like anything else. They can get money for it. It's a procedure they can get money for, and it's pretty easy to do. But it's not a typical test that in the past was ever on the radar, unless somebody was having that or they had strong family history.
Yeah. All I know is I came out with a 0 on my calcium score.
So he has a 0, which means none of his arteries.
I felt like Superman, and
0.
It just reinforced, even though I know you can still have a heart attack with
Well, there's different
issues.
reasons you can have a heart
But
attack, yeah.
I felt like Superman because I've been eating like this, how they say not to. A lot of doctors would say not to. And there's nothing's clogged in there. So,
well, this goes to show, like, who knows what starts it and what happens and when it starts. We do know that plaques start early. This is why you need to feed. I mean, the more you learn about these things, like, you got to start this with your kids, because we know nowadays obesity, fatty liver disease, atherosclerotic plaques in the vessels, these are starting in children now. They're literally starting in children. And the whole inflammatory cascade of sugar, excess sugar in the blood, does increase immune problems and causes atherosclerotic plaques in the vessels. It's part of the mechanism. And the hemoglobin A1C and all this hemoglycated red blood cells causing problems in the small capillary beds. This is a problem, and we really need to start young. And I think the reason that we've seen more cardiac disease in the last, since the middle of the 1900s, in percentage to what was before, is that we see more obesity and we see more sugar consumption, and we see more sedentary lifestyles. And I had made a comment, I think, on one of my series I did, the last series I did on GI health. I made a comment about, just the differences from the 1950s till now, and why we may be seeing an elevation of cardiac disease. Some guy made a comment on YouTube about, like, it's not true. That's all he said. But I was thinking to myself, like, well, what is true? What are the big defining factors, at least in our diet and in our food supply, that has radically changed since my parents were young kids, or since my grandparents?
It's got to be sugar consumption.
It's just the processed food. It's the sugar consumption. And today, they outlawed, the FDA finally actually Red 3. It's one of the food colorings. They literally just said it's cancer causing. And this is in our food supply. It's in all the candy your kids are eating. It's in all these drinks. It's in energy drinks. It's in all this stuff. And FDA just came out and said, oh, cancer causing, where decades ago they literally wouldn't let companies put it in beauty products anymore for coloring because they knew it caused cancer. But just today it went through, they've been allowing us to eat it. So the chemicals, all the things that are being put in, and I think that it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see what's happened.
It's my opinion that I think most people already know all this stuff. They know what they're eating is garbage. They know when they can't read the ingredient label and they see nothing but high fructose and
I don't think people read ingredient labels.
Words that they can't pronounce. They just know, but they're just too lazy to do anything about it. It's the easy button. It's the easiest way is to just do what everybody else is doing instead of making some radical changes.
And the more you learn about the ketogenic diet too, to tell you the truth, and I call it ketogenic because it's just high fat, which Ryan is doing. It's like you can do this diet even, like, there's always this what about poor people? What about people that don't have money? What about this? You can literally go to, like, wherever you live, I don't know, Kroger or wherever, and you can buy fat, you can buy meat, cheap meat if you want. It would suck. I wouldn't want everyone, but you could buy eggs. I know eggs are expensive nowadays, but think of all the money you spend on the frozen foods and the crap you buy in the thing. It's all processed.
That's one of the things that people say.
It doesn't matter your socioeconomic status. And this diet, you don't have to eat as much food.
People always respond with, wow, that sounds expensive. You're eating like a steak every night. And you don't have to eat steak. You can eat, wild game meat that's lean. You just got to add some fat to it for sure. But that's always their response. But I think what people forget and what they don't take into consideration is when you look in their shopping cart, the same people that are going to tell you that they can't afford it are buying 10 cases of Mountain Dew, a bunch of garbage bread,
And
stuff they don't give
unfortunately,
away.
low
Cereal.
income pays for that stuff. Low income pays for bad food.
But it's just
stamps.
a shopping cart full of garbage. And not only is that costing you a pretty penny when you buy it, but it's costing you in the long run. So I don't buy into the fact that it's only something that upper middle class beyond can do. I think anybody can do it. Like Hill said, there's ways of getting cheap cuts of meat that have fat content. You know, butter is definitely your friend when it comes to this diet. That's an easy button for me when it comes to getting the fat where it should be. So,
yeah.
there's an easy way and then there's a hard way. And the hard way, I'm on that path right now. It's definitely harder to take the route where you got to be real strict and you just got to avoid all the easy, you know, pretty stuff out there that most people are filling their shopping carts with. That is easy, and most of it is pretty cheap, but it's going to cost you.
Yeah, and the other thing I do want to just mention as far as, like, you know, the cardiac arteries and atherosclerotic plaques and sugar is, remember, it's not just what you eat, it's your stress level. I mean, a lot of people are having cardiac events because they have some plaques, but the immune system responds to stress, and cortisol is a blood sugar liberator. It pulls glycogen from that, and when you have high amounts of stress and cortisol, you're going to have more glucose and you're going to have more inflammation. So that's another thing that we live on. We live in this weird, super stressed out world where we're also massively distracted and we're sedentary. So a lot of it's not just diet that dictates whether or not you're going to have a heart attack, you know. We've seen the most in shape people. We've known people that were in shape, that were healthy, that looked amazing, had great lean muscle mass, and they fell over and died of a heart attack. Yeah. So there's a lot of factors that play into it, but I think that the diet is huge. I think that stress is huge, and I think that medicine is just we know it's 10 to 20 years for these things to show up in clinical work. And so I think that the cholesterol thing is going to be changing. And it takes people like the people that are out there at least talking about these things. And, you know, really in a lot of ways, sacrificing their medical license and their reputation and putting all the hard work that they've done for decades on the line to say that, you know, this could be a healthier way for some people to live their lives. And this is why the cookie cutter thing, it just doesn't work.
Well, again, we're going to go, like, we don't need to preach to everybody about, like, everything they should be doing.
Yes, we do.
This diet, we're not saying that. Again, this is just something I want to do.
I'm just saying there's a lot of factors.
Like, to each his own when it comes to diet. But this diet worked for me. It didn't work for you that well. You're trying a new keto diet.
Well, I'm going to try with little carb and see if I can get into ketosis and see if I can do it.
I think doing something strict like this is good for a lot of reasons, like we already talked about. I think the willpower, like it tells you that you still got it. Like you can still turn down, you know, breads and cookies and sugars and sweets and all that kind of stuff. I think it makes me feel better knowing that I can avoid all that stuff and be stubborn about it. But it's probably not for everybody. But I think before you poo-poo it, maybe, you know, you could always try it. Just set a date. Set like 30 days, 60 days. I don't think doing under 90 days does you anything. I think 90 days is like, that's when you can reevaluate and be like, this wasn't for me. Because that allows most people to kind of get into that ketosis state.
Yeah, and the truth be told is the people that talk about things that they think are wonderful, it was wonderful for them, and they want to share that with people. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for everybody, but when it works for you, you want to tell people, and you want them to be healthier, and you want to feel like you do. So that's the big piece of it.
Who knows where I'll be in a year or 5 years, because it wasn't all that long ago where I was eating greens like they were going out of style. And I just thought, because everybody said it was healthy, but it wasn't doing my body any favors, put it that way. And it wasn't getting me up the mountain, and it was causing GI stuff, and it was poor for my brain, I can tell you that. So now we're going a different route, but again, this may change. I do think I'm going to go back, not super strict, but similar to what I was doing before, because I just liked the simplicity of it, and it worked well for me.
Well, let me tell you, the drawback of it is that you're not very fun to eat with anymore.
No, it's boring.
It's like you want to go out to eat. Like we went out one night on the, we went on a little date. He can't even eat anything. It's like, what is he going to eat?
True.
So every restaurant we go to, it's like, can he eat there? Can you eat this? Should we go there? And then what we actually realize? Eating out kind of sucks. One, because he can't eat anything. We
realized that a while back.
But then when you eat out, you feel like, ugh, when you eat out. But it's not, even cooking at home, we used to cook and make all kinds of things and work in the garden and bring it in and cook. And not that he wouldn't do that, but it's very simple. He's like, I'm hungry right now.
Steak.
I'm going to eat. And he makes a steak and he eats. It's not the same. That's
steak
the one thing I don't like about it.
always tastes the same. It tastes good. It never doesn't taste good. And I've eaten a lot of steaks in this last year, so I'm pretty content with that. And my meals, again, the backcountry meals, which we're going to do another discussion on in a video, because I think people need to visualize it and see it, like actually getting cooked up and tossed in the freeze dryer. It's real simple, but it's the same thing. I don't even want to count how many meals I ate that were exactly the same twice a day all season long.
Paley, she's like, oh my God, Dad eats the same meal.
Every meal
10 days in a row
is labeled scramble.
Every day.
Single one.
She's like, it's gross.
I think I've eaten probably 250 scrambles just this hunting season since I started the diet. At least 250 scrambles. And they're always the same. They're exactly the same. But every time I eat one, it tastes good. Yeah. I don't get sick of it. So it's all that butter.
All right. Well, anything else
I think we went a little beyond our time. We set a clock because we keep going over.
We always go. We don't even look at the clock, but my computer actually shut off, so I can't even tell what the clock is anymore.
So we're probably way over, but I think we explained it.
Well, there you go. Carnivore Part 2. And disclaimer, we don't know what the hell we're talking about, so do it at your own risk.
Yeah, I'm not recommending this for anybody. It's just people have questions. So it was fun.
Have fun
to do. I'm going to keep doing it.
Okay, see ya.